Hello.
Hello.
Episode 4 of SOS Podcast. Dorinda Russell.
Cameron Vanor.
And we're going to have just a conversation today about, really, I told her, like, the theme of this is really in the midst of the storm. Because they or may not know, like, obviously, they may not know, that, guess it came on, what, Friday? So, and the name of the hurricane is Helene. Helene?
I think.
Yeah, it's the hurricane.
Yeah.
Came through, and not only, and I'll say this, like, most of the time when it comes to hurricanes, because we're not on the coast, we're literally smack dab in East Tennessee. We know that things have happened, devastations happen on the coast many times. I have never known it to reach Tennessee. Like, we've gotten the rain,
Yeah.
like the winds and stuff, but never like this.
Not.
We have, so we live in East Tennessee, and Friday afternoon, we were, we knew it was Category 4, which is like a very high category, and it was coming on strong. It already had hit certain parts of Florida and things like that. And then what's kind of odd is there's other parts of Florida that didn't get anything. And then there's parts of Georgia that got a bunch of stuff, and other parts that didn't. It's just like all these random kind of places. But I want to say this because this is, kind of sets the stage for the conversation. But we went to, so Friday I was going to a ladies' retreat about that, and with my mom's church, the one I grew up in. And I was really praying this. I even got one of our friends, Jody, sent me a thing now that's like, I'm praying for you about retreat. Yes, and like, he sent me like text messages and stuff. And it was very sweet. But I've been praying about retreat, just that God would have his way. There's girls that I grew up with that I hope you're watching. We literally grew up in youth group together. And like, life just takes you different paths and, just go different directions. But I was like, really, God, I really have a desire to be reconnected with you. Like in adulthood. Yeah. And just kind of have a full circle moment. And so I was so excited all week long to go to, and I didn't even know where we were going. Isn't that crazy? I was like, I think it's fine. JR kept saying, where are you going? I was like, I don't know. I think it's like next to Vision Forge. So anyways, I really, I was really prepared. But, so I go and pick up my mom at Pigeon Forge that morning. It was raining crazy Friday morning. At this point, I knew we were going to do work. But I go get her because my dad was in town for the Southern Gospel Convention. Of course he was. And we go, home, and I get all my stuff packed and ready. And so by the time we get headed down the road, it's like 12:30 maybe. And JR's like, calls and it's like, hey, Newport is underwater downtown. Well, not that I don't believe my husband, but you think about that and you're like, how?
Yeah. You're like, okay, it's just a little flood.
Yeah, because maybe it's just coming in their stores, like, like
it does in Gatlinburg.
Right.
I mean, it's terrible.
Right.
But it's just,
we've heard about it.
Yeah. You don't think that it would be.
Right. So I kind of was like, and my mom and I both, I think, were in denial because we're headed to New York for our ladies' retreat. And some of the girls was already down there. And so mom's like trying to call. And I think she might have got Kathy. I don't know. But anyway, it doesn't matter. And we were like, and mom's like, I think, I think it'll be fine. And I'm telling you. So JR's like, just let me know you make me safe because I'm telling you, babe, they just put this over the news. Like, Newport is underwater. So we get there, and that feeling that's just kind of like when it's an unknown situation. You get up on the interstate, take exit, and there's all these police officers and everything. And there's a whole area that you can't go into. And they're redirecting us. Well, where we were located is kind of like in the mountains, and so it wasn't down in that part. But when I get there, we finally get to the place, there's no cell service. And there was a lady that lived in Newport that was working kind of through things, and God really laid on my heart to pray for her. She was really concerned about children and stuff. And that becomes real whenever it's literally right down the street from where you're at. So I'm in that place, and I'm kind of like, God, you're really going to do something, because all this, and I had so much peace. Like, I wasn't a wreck. I wasn't freaking out. I was just like really at peace. And I'm like, I just started operating on what it wanted to do, and so, and it's not that those things are not devastating. Because like I said, for us, that's abnormal to know that in Newport, Tennessee, of all places, and Greenville, Tennessee, and Irwin, and Elizabeth, and I went to college in Johnson City. So did I. I'm from Kingsport. Kingsport had power out. Johnson City had water turned off. Like, there was a lot of things that went on this weekend. But I headed back home yesterday, and it was honestly, I went across the French Broad River, which is like another thing that they were talking about, because kept rising. Yeah. And like, I can't remember how many feet it rose, like 11 or 12 feet in like a short amount of time. And of course, the French Broad River also goes through Pigeon Forge. So, anyways, and two like bridges were gone, and 2 dams broke, and all the things. And then, of course, all the devastation in North Carolina. And then that gorge right there between Tennessee and North Carolina, where that road literally just dissolved, basically. Or caved and dissolved. And now I think there's some slide issues and things like that. And then Irwin to have the whole literal hospital underwater. So kind of setting the stage for you all. That's what's gone on this past weekend, like within just miles of us. And the NOLA chuck should not have been able to withstand what it endured, but God. So that kind of sets the stage. And so what we both kind of felt like, we should talk about today is, when we're in a storm, like in the midst of a storm, whether it be one that's literally going on around us, or maybe it's a storm just of life, like maybe we're going through things in our marriage, we're going through things with our kids, we're going through things with friendships, or our jobs, or finances, or, our church, or whatever, right? Health, whatever it looks like for you. So, when was there like a time for you that you felt like, well, first of all, read the scripture about like when there was a storm and what Jesus did in the storm.
So, let's see, I'm gonna, this is Mark 4, 35 through 41. Slow. Sound was not good because it was aggressive. So, I'm hoping, why don't you pour it to
Your little thing. I'll give a little bit. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Okay.
And looks fine.
Cool. All right.
Yeah. If this is janky, let me know.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. Man, as long as you can hear. Okay. So this one's Mark 4, what was it, 35 through 41. It says, on that day when evening came, he said to them, let's go over to the other side. After dismissing the crowd, they took him along with them in the boat, just as he was. And other boats were with him. And a fierce gale of wind developed, and the waves were breaking over the boat so much that the boat was already filling with water. And yet Jesus himself was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing? And he got up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Hush, be still. And the wind died down and became perfectly calm. And he said to them, Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith? They became very much afraid and said to one another, Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey? It's
So he's
yeah.
asleep. He's chilling. Right? He's chilling. And like all this crazy stuff's going on around, right? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you this and then I'm going to ask you. So this weekend when we went to this retreat, ladies' retreat, my whole thing for this, I was just so amped up to go. Like, I can't explain it. I just felt like, God, you're going to do something, you know? And I knew my mom was teaching too on faith. I didn't know all of what she was teaching, but she taught about being steady in the boat and trusting God that He's got the situation. And how timely is that message for what was literally going on? So, and she wanted me to sing goodness of God, so I was there. And but literally, I was there 2 nights, and I slept like a baby both nights. Like I really slept great, you know. And part of that was probably because I ate a lot of junk and a whole lot of pinwheels later. And then they're so good. Some people call it potato candy or potato, not potato. Yeah, like the peanut butter, and then like the confectioner sugar, and somebody told me to do. Anyway, we need to get anything. Okay, but the pinwheels, I ate a lot of them, so I don't know. Maybe I was really tired. Yeah, I ate a lot of pinwheels, but and also, just so you know, that's the UV light. These are sticker nails. Just so you know, like they're the pretty cheap ones. So these right here, and Cameron always says I look at my nails too much because I get excited. No, she just does get excited. I do get excited. She's like, well, and you know, I really didn't know how the UV light was going to do because I've just done the basic sticker ones, but they look good. Yeah, they do. And they've stayed on really well. Like they, you know, they're kind of got a little hardness to them. Anyways, so was doing nails, eating pinwheels, having a great time. And then there's these things called diamond paintings. Have you ever seen those? We were working on those, like, anyways, I'll talk about that later, but that was kind of cool crap. So we're doing all these things, having a great time. We're laughing, we're crying, we're all the things. We made the scoop video that we had a blast. I mean, literally. I felt like I was back in like 8th or 9th. Flip over. It was just so much fun. And it was such a sweet presence of the Lord. And honestly, I loved every minute of it. Like, it was such a full circle moment for me, but I slept so good there. And I was like, you know, and at one point I was like, God, this is like so new for me to not be thinking about all the things and just, like, literally feet away. Yeah. And I'm like, but it almost like feel guilty because you're not in crisis mode. But it's like, well, that's not how He wants us to live. He literally wants us to live in such a posture that, like, we can laugh and do goofy videos while there's literal devastation. Not that you're insensitive to those things, because they cut water off and everything where we were at. And had that Nolichucky broke, we would have been still up there at this present moment. So I'm not making light of the situation. But I'm saying God is so good that if we really believe that He is going to be who He says He is, and whatever that looks like, then we can be able to have joy in the midst of it. That's the goal. And I can say that was probably one of the first times that I've had that much joy and peace in the midst of something. Because I mean, for goodness sakes, I told Steph earlier today, I was like, we've never experienced a level of devastation that's close to home. I mean, worse. I think that, I mean, just like the yeah, exactly. And I mean, that was devastating. Oh my gosh, yes. You know, but you see, like, how God moved in that, and how He's already moved in the midst. But before we get into that, when was there a time that you felt like God is asleep in your storm?
A lot, honestly. I hate to say it, but I can't really pinpoint a time. I have a terrible memory. So, I mean, I think we all do. But, I mean, recently, I think, um, probably within the last year or so, I mean, and I've talked about it, several times, but financially, I went from a job where I was making one, you know, and more than what I did. And then it's just not the excuse,
Right.
And getting into that season, there are times where I'm like, God, are you listening? Like I am crying out to you, you know.
You feel like it's like bouncing off the walls?
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm getting an answer, but in the depths of like my being and like the Holy Spirit within me, sure, it's like I have a deep knowing that is there, regardless of what I'm feeling. Sure, it's on the surface level. So it's like the Holy Spirit does give you like some sort of comfort, but when you're trying to combat the flesh versus the spirit and what you can see and all your senses, and,
Yeah.
you can't feel something, if you don't physically see the money in your bank account, or if you don't physically receive money coming, or food, or whatever it might be, it's that constant battle between the Holy Spirit.
What voice you been listening to?
Yeah, exactly. It goes right back, and but He does say to cry out, like I will hear you, and it goes back to the wait for to this time, yeah. But I mean, recently,
Yeah,
exactly.
Well,
we should.
I was telling her earlier, there's this video through this, everybody's posted their videos, and we've seen some of this tragic stuff through just literally, I mean, all of this flood damage and everything else. There's one video that's kind of going around through there, and I don't know who posted it, but really powerful. And honestly, it's like this older man, I don't know how old he was, it's just a picture like of him walking. Like they snapshotted him, and this man had like lost everything in this flood. And like, I mean, all of his vegetation, all of his animals, like everything, and his home. And you think about that, like he's somebody that's worked his whole life for this, and here he is, like, and everything's washed away in a matter of moments. And when people came to him to see like what his thoughts were, he redirected them back to Jesus. You know that you're saved. And that was his whole mission. And so when I watched that video just briefly, I mean, it was so sweet, and like I was in tears about it, of course. But it took me back to my own grandparents, because I'm like, they were some hardworking individuals. All four of my grandparents. My papa worked 2 and 3 jobs for years. For literally, pennies on the dollar. My mama worked in the cafeteria for years. She used to sew and make clothes and stuff for like my dad and uncle and aunt and all that. I made Barbie clothes. Did she really? Like, where did this thing at? Oh, love. I bet they would be. She's got a ton. Oh my gosh. I bet she did. Yes. It's because they have tons and tons of clothes and stuff. But anyway, so the Barbie clothes. But they just were hardworking. And my dad tells this story all the time that, first of all, my papa would work one job, and then he would go door-to-door sales for cemetery plots. But who gets excited about cemetery plots? If you're walking door to door to sell. And I just think about that because I'm like, and the people he had actually got encountered and things like that. And they had a house that was, when my dad was a kid, that was just this plain little house. And they lived right next to a river, and they had wolf rats was the thing. Actually, they did their house, that was the thing. Yeah. And so, I know your face is but
did they live? Oh, what?
Well, I give too much information.
Oh,
No, but I say all that to say, they went through things that would wreck people right now. Like having to work several jobs to just make ends meet, put food on the table, and deal with critters in their house, or just they went through devastation with loss of family members because medicine wasn't even close to what it is now. They didn't know what things were, and um, you know, my dad had actually worked this job for years, and this thing fell on his ear, and when he was working, and I mean he was deaf in one ear because of it. So but he just kept on working. He kept on doing what he had to do to provide for his family, and they just weren't. They weathered storms really well. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And they knew that it was just a part of, but they had such grit, and they knew how to get through things in life with such a grace. And I know for me, my papa, I'll never forget, he told me, I was probably 16 years old, and I had quit one job and needed another job, and I was desperate for a job at this point because I paid a lot of my own bills. And I remember going to my papa and mama's house, and I was like, Papa, he's like, have you had any luck getting a job? And I was like, no, Papa, I've not got a job yet. And he said, well, what you need to do is you need to pack yourself a lunch. He said, you look better. Ask him about a job. And you tell him that you'll be there every day until there's an opening, and you're going to pack your lunch and wait. So I thought that was crazy. I was like, I'm not doing that. I didn't want to tell him that, let him down. I was not doing that. But I really was like, well, why not? I was that desperate. But my papa knew desperation. My mama knew desperation. Both my mamas, both my papas, they knew desperation. And so I go up, I'll never forget, I went to Food City. I went all these places, and I went to Food City. And I said, hey, I need to talk to the manager. 16-year-old kid. It's still funny to this day that I did this, and they were like, okay, what's it about? And I was like, well, I need a job. And they're like, oh, we're not hiring right now. And I don't know why in the world I was courageous. Well, I do know. Probably right. But I said, oh, that's fine. I'll be right over here eating my lunch until he's ready to talk. I said, because I'll be here every day until there's a job. So they kind of, just kind of pushed it aside, oh, yeah, I kind of laughed it off. I went up there the next 2 days. The exact same thing. So I was that desperate. I had to have money. And had car insurance, phone bill, all that stuff already at 16. And so finally, this guy by the name of Rick, he was the store manager, he came out and said, fine. He said, I'll hire you. My goodness, Yeah. And I told him, I said, I don't care if I scrub the floors. I've got to have a job. So he hired me. And that's just an example of having to have grit. And there being times in our lives where we're desperate. And in a storm, we're uncomfortable. We're desperate for something to feel different again. It's so uncomfortable. There's so many emotions. My house, well, my apartment, not house, it was a house all on its own, but there's 2 apartments. It's broke up into 2. When my part of the upstairs apartment caught fire, and I went through that, about that. There's nothing like that feeling to lose everything you own in a moment. So I understand, when you see, I may not have gone through a flood and see it washed away before me, but I've seen it go over the snow. And it literally did it in 7 minutes. And I love it.
where it's but it's here to talk about what is going to say. You're going to try, and what is going to stay is going to be everlasting, right? What you built into life, or is it all burnt up?
Right.
And don't get wrong, I'm not minimizing what the loss of our experience, and probably the loss that some people experience. It's still we have that Jesus in the boat, that calm storm, where you can be asleep in the midst of all this. That is the peace that happens. It's right. Thank God that in order to persevere and get through, have grit, it, regardless of things together, it's a calm that we can step into.
Absolutely. I know when I went through my house fire, I remember how quickly it happened, and just I was so grateful that Peyton was with me. My little dog, that he wasn't little, was huge, but Murphy, he was a good dog. He was one of the reasons that was trying to tell me what was going on. But and my old recovery pastor at the time, not that he's old, but shout out to John Burks. But he was my previous recovery pastor. He got there like afterwards too. But I just remember that night was Celebrate Recovery, and I was there because I hosted. And my place just went other blanks. People were like, why in the world are you here? I'm like, where do you expect me to go? Like, that, it's like, and that's what I mean by grit with people, is like, when we were, just even an example, this past weekend, we didn't have great cell service where we were at, barely had any cell service, and it was so nice because we were intentionally in the moment. And I think sometimes, like, for example, God says, when we went through COVID, that was devastating for so many people, all of us included. We lost somebody, went through things. It was such a just horrendous time. But think about the family time that came from it. People are working from home still and have meals on the table with their families now because of that season. There's people that literally had moments with family members that maybe they would have never been gifted with. There's just a lot of things got brought back to the home family dynamic.
Yeah.
Even though all these things were going on, the main thing came back. And I remember when I get on, and all these people would be in their homes and they would worship Jesus together, and see these kids like watching church, online, and they've got their hands raised in their home, like it would just melt me, and so I say, like, God doesn't bring it, but He allows it, and He'll use it. He'll use it for good, and He's never ever going to waste any hurt, any pain, and He wants us to live in such a way to where we can be asleep in the boat, per se, when the waves in life are tossing and turning, and have the peace that can only come. And that's the goal. That's the end goal. But, I was thinking too, I think I wrote this down. Shout out to Emma Sweeney and Alicia Keener. It's their birthdays today. Yeah, this is what I wrote down. Like, when all hope is seemed lost, what and how have you found solace? Like, in knowing when all things, like, when all hope's lost. I mean, it doesn't even have to be, materialistic things. Just like when all hope is lost. Like there's been times in your life. Like, what did you find? How and what did you find solace in?
I mean, if I'll be quite honest with you, the past couple of weeks I've been, um, there's a lot of changing and shifting that God is doing.
Sure.
And I've got a lot of things currently that, I've stepped into, just a lot. And I like sleep. I like my sleep. And if I don't get sleep, then all hope is lost then, for me. I mean, honestly, because, it's just like, I get in like a tunnel vision almost, of like, woe is me, I need sleep, like all this other stuff are just irritants at that point. And we were talking about this, but, this, just to explain this, I was sitting with the Lord last night and telling him, like, I don't like being this way. And I don't think that I had gotten, like, honest about that necessarily in the past little bit. And,
I'll talk to them.
but I don't think that I had been quite honest with God and confessed that that was something that I was struggling with.
Yeah.
And I was frustrated, one with myself, but also with Him. Because I'm like, I know that I'm, in this season. And, I see the next step ahead. You give me the next step to take. But it's that middle transition period that I'm currently in. And it's uncomfy. I mean, it really is. Because there's so many moving pieces from, like what I've been dealing with.
Yeah.
And then moving into this next thing while still, trying to balance both of them, along with, life in general. It's just been hard. And, it was like in a moment, God told me that I needed to relax one, but I needed to live in a state of relaxed expectancy. And He was just revealing to me that I was so focused on, what the next step was, what He was calling me to, what things were irritating, and letting that overtake anything that He was trying to do in the moment. And, don't get me wrong, like God calls us and He wants us to step into different things and He wants us to be alert and to be seeking Him to, what to do. But at the same time, even if He has given us a promise, just like He did me, David, He gave David a promise. So He just let her do something ridiculous. Exactly. And look how much he had to go through before he finally got to that promise. God has it.
And how much naysaying.
Yeah, exactly. But God gives you that promise, so you can, look to that. But it doesn't mean that all this other stuff that's going on right now He doesn't have a purpose for it too.
Yeah.
And so I think honestly last night I realized that I wasn't living in that relaxed, peaceful state. I wasn't sleeping in the boat. I was over here waving my arms around like I've been and saying, God, do you care?
Yeah.
Like, what did they say? The teacher, do you not care that we're perishing? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how I feel sometimes too. And I know probably you all do too, but do you not care that I'm over here suffering? And He does.
Sure.
He absolutely does. But we talk about too, through suffering, comes the grit.
Yeah.
Comes that, it's like practice. You say that you're going to through a lot of stuff. But I bet in the beginning, when they first started going through, hardship and stuff before they had gotten practice in it, they probably were asking the same thing you here.
I'm sure they were. And I'm sure even later on there's some season of that. Because, and my other grandparents, my grandma, Peggy, and my father, Dad, I don't need that either.
Yeah. Was she the one that made the sourdough bread? No, the Barbie dresses?
No,
No.
that's Wanda.
Oh, okay.
That's not Wanda's dad's mom.
Okay.
Gotcha. Peggy's mom, yeah. And, no, my grandma Peggy had sourdough bread. It was the best. I'm serious. It was the best bread that I've ever had. And I didn't realize how much of a luxury that bread was until it wasn't there anymore. Because I just was so used to having it. And she made the best peanut butter eggs you've ever tasted and apple butter. Like, they would make the big old huge, like huge eggs. And I remember being in there, and my mama, she was like, it's all. And,
yeah. It's like me so much. It'll remind you of your grandma.
Okay.
Sourdough bread.
Peanut butter. Yeah, peanut butter eggs. Yeah. But anyway, she'd have be rolling them. Like, she just worked so hard. And she would be hurting so bad in her shoulder. You never know. And she'd just get around, boy. She'd just get around and wherever, found, in the car that she had, like, I'll never forget, it's a little limited. And that thing's like a boat, And she had like a little booster seat in it.
I was about to say, they didn't have seats that steered it up as far as they do now.
She was the cutest thing, just heading around town in it. But, anyway, oh gosh, yes. She was, but if you went to her house, if you went to either grandparent's house, you go in, and there was always peace at their house. Like, neither set of my grandparents were ever just like loaded and had a bunch of money and stuff, but they never didn't have money.
Right.
Like, they always, and when like they always did. And I remember my mama, Peggy, would always walk in her house when it was always like 80 degrees, but so good crispy in there. But you'd walk in and it was always like she had her Bible laid out, she'd been studying, and she'd go visit a lot of the shut-ins and stuff because she'd go visit them and while she could still drive and all the things. And my papa on the other side did the same thing. They just spent time with folks, and people thought they were going at a slower pace, but really they were just in a place of trust. They wholeheartedly just trusted God that everything's going to work out.
And I think God does love things. He will.
He will.
When you're not trying.
Absolutely. I told, I think it was my husband the other day. I said, I feel like God has had to, there's a lot of full circle things that he's doing because there's more than one encouraging thing, but when we look at Job, look and see his life, talking about devastation, there's all these, wonder if there's any, like, how can anybody relate to my level of devastation? I promise if you pick this up right here, you pick up a Bible, you'll find so many accounts of people through devastation and how they came through. But only by the help of God. And Job was like an honorable man. Like, he was, he had the way that it kind of presents him, obviously we didn't know Job, but, he was well to do. He had kids, he had land, and he had, I think he in the world standard, he's, probably in one of the best positions possible. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, all these things start happening in his life, and they don't just affect him in a, financial way or, a family way. Like, he literally gets hit by everything. And his own wife told him to curse God and die.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't. He was like, he had boils all over his body. Yeah, like swords all over him.
Yeah.
And he was just, I mean, there was just one thing after the other after the other. And he lost so much during that time. But he would not turn his back on God. He knew. And God ended up blessing him double fold. And so
he was angry.
of course.
He was angry at God, but he was expressing.
He communicated with him.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back to the relationship aspect. Like, we have to have that open line of communication with God.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if we don't, then what kind of relationship is that? If we're
exactly,
don't get me wrong, we're supposed to revere God. He is holy. We can't. Without Jesus, we couldn't step into His presence.
That's exactly right.
Isaiah, whenever he went to God's presence, he said, "Woe is me," first himself. And because he was a man of uncleanness. And God tried to send with a hot coal to burn his lips to cleanse him so he could speak to God. And so God is holy. Yes, we're supposed to revere him, but
it's a relationship.
It is a relationship. And our pastor this past weekend, part of his sermon, talked about it, and how it's okay to have questions for God. Questioning God. Questioning His goodness.
Totally different.
Totally different. But questioning, why is this happening? That is, you say, completely show me. Exactly, show me. Like, why am I dealing with this? But and through that too, with that open line of communication with God, it's like He's able to give us revelation and and understanding through that, so we can step into that.
Yeah, my mom actually said something this weekend. She was teaching, and she's talking about Charles Stanley, and she said Charles Stanley always said, instead of saying that I'm worried about this God, to switch your verbiage to concern, because worry is showing a lack of faith. Being concerned is a natural feeling.
Yeah.
Just changing the verbiage and inviting God into that to be able to show you, like if you're truly concerned, like, you come to somebody as a friend and you say, I'm concerned about this, like you're showing, it's not that you're saying, I don't trust you, it's that you're seeing something that, brings questions. And so, worrying is saying, I'm really questioning your motive here. You know what I'm saying? But concern is saying, hey, like, help me understand. It's such a difference when you look at it from just that one shift of word. And I think that's the same thing with God. It's like He desires to communicate with us. He desires, like we talked about last episode about voice. And He desires to reveal Himself to us and what He's doing,
Yeah. I want to say that verse that I mentioned. What was it? 2 Chronicles 14 through 15. Purpose.
By the way, my mom drank that tea. Half calf, even.
Half calf.
And she was like a hamster on a wheel. I was like, what is going on right now? She's like, the words coming out of my mouth don't match my mind. And it's just, she was just all over. And then she loved it. Like, she absolutely loved it. I'm like, Mom, could you imagine if she had a full cat?
No.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Anyways, yeah. Loaded teas. Just saying.
Yes. They're okay. So, 2 Chronicles 14 through 15. Um, let's see. Actually, I'm going to read 12 for to kind of force it. Yeah. So it's Solomon and God. It says, "Then the Lord appeared to Solomon at night and said, I've heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a house of sacrifice. If I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send a plague among my people, and my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. Now my eyes will be open and my ears attentive to the prayer offered in this place." And last night, and this was something else that popped up in my quiet time with God. He was, I've read this verse 100 times, but in that moment, when I read, let's see, if they will humble themselves, pray, and seek my face, when he's giving us steps.
Right.
You know, he's saying, if my people who are called by my name humble themselves, pray, so cry out to him because you need help, seek my face. God could have easily had just said, like, pray, skip to seek my face, you know.
Right.
Turn from their wicked ways, because I am God and I'm God. But he wants us to
look for him.
Right, in every aspect. And I think that's what we miss a lot of times. We are so focused on the destination, the goal, the calling, the fulfillment of whatever it is we're seeking or whatever he promised. And we look past him. But without him, it's a place, you know. And so it's like right in the middle of that, and literally right in the middle of it, humble myself, pray, seek my face is number 3. And then it says that turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear. So it's 5 things. And seek my face is right in the middle, just like right in the middle of that boat. Seek my face. Because that's where it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a good word.
That goes along too, I mean, with what you're seeing in this world in general. I mean, not just even in
It's like on.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this too. I guess it's a grandparents like moment today or something. I don't know. I keep going back to them because I have great examples.
This weekend was very
full circle.
Throwback.
Yeah, it was a throwback for me.
So
Yeah. I remember when I was a little girl, my papa would go. He would go walking because he had knee surgery, and my mama, of course, she's a class. She'd get on. She'd be like, "God, you're going walking today." You know, like, I'm going to go do that. She'd make him go. When I was a little girl, he always would bring up this time that I walked with him, like this. I mean, I probably walked with him maybe a mile or two in little black patent leather shoes and little really, socks. And that always, like, moved him to tears if we would talk about it, that I would walk that with him. And when I look back on those times in my life, I look at just people. My grandfather was just a great example of me of living in perfect peace. He had joy all the time. To some people, like I said, it looked like he lived a slow life, but then he just was in the moment. And he found joy in the small things, and he laughed a lot. He loved to laugh. He loved to eat too. But, he was never somebody that was just like this big, evangelist or pastor or teacher. It's not his gifts from God, but he made sure that all of his siblings, had meals and, things that they needed. The shut-ins, he'd go visit them, get them to laugh and stuff. And he was a family man. He was all about his grandkids and stuff. And when I think about just how Jesus operates, I think that's kind of how he wants us to live, because it's just, we trust him. Yeah. And it wasn't that things weren't going on in my papa's life, and my mama's life, or my mama and dad's life. Like, they had stuff going on all the time, but they lived in such a way as if nothing were going on. You know, their joy wasn't affected by their storm. And I have to think that if my mama Peggy was alive this weekend, she would have been at a ladies' retreat. And I can say she would have been sitting there, cutting jokes, laughing, having her a big old time, and not being wrapped up in what ifs. She had been the one that would have been encouraging people to trust. And I thank God that I have that as a backbone in my family. That's been a basis for me because we've been through a lot. I mean, I've been through a lot, you've been through a lot, but they went through a whole lot, and they could have joy. And so I think that's just the word for today, y'all. Like, I think realizing that, you know, God is in every moment with us and that we can fully trust Him when there's literally a storm raging, like, around us. And sometimes in us, like, you know, He can bring peace to that.
Can I say real quick? So
Yeah.
that verse that Mark, before this, whenever she was telling me that this, what had stuck out to her, I had read this last time. And, let's see, back to Mark 35, when Jesus is in the boat asleep. After, you know, they cry out and said, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" And he got up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Hush, be still." And the wind died down and became perfectly calm. I think that in that moment too, he wasn't only just speaking to the disciple, or sorry, not to the disciple, but to the wind, but to the disciple also, and saying, "Hush, be still." And that's what we need to be. We need to be still and know that He is God.
Absolutely.
And
think about just our present devastation.
Yeah.
There's boots on the ground, y'all, in all areas, and helicopters, and people have rallied, man. Like, devastation, with whether we choose to believe this or not, it brings unity.
Yeah.
When somebody's in a place of crisis or devastation, they're not going to care what political view you have, what gender you are. They're not going to care about what color we are. They're not going to care about your pedigrees, your social status, your followers on TikTok. Like, none of that's going to matter when you're in a place of devastation and crisis. When somebody, like, literally lends a hand to you, you're going to grab a hold of it.
Yeah.
And I just think this is a time where we can be a beacon of hope and light. And, Cameron was telling me, because I was coming back from Newport yesterday, so I didn't get to be in the service with, our people at Fairview, but I was listening to some of the message, and I didn't get to the part you're talking about, but about the Billy Graham.
Oh, yes.
So Billy Graham's, like, cabin was in North Carolina. They also have a disaster relief team, Samaritan's Purse, that, like, specializes in knowing what to do and how to do it when things happen, which is phenomenal. Yeah. So they're, like, present in North Carolina.
Yeah, and so supposedly, I don't know,
right?
Walked into this area, but I think Billy Graham's cabin or house or something is in North Carolina, within that general. And these rescue folks, they had went in, I guess, to check on the cabin. I don't know if there's people staying there. I don't know exactly, but when they walked, it was like almost like a border, like a boundary line that they crossed over, and like nothing was touched. On this other side, there's the station, but past this, they said that there wasn't anything. Everything was intact. It looked beautiful, just like it had always. So, and I mean, who knows what, but I mean, the prayers.
It just makes me think of the fiery furnace, man.
Yeah.
It was, the fourth man in the fire.
Exactly.
And, like, when we were in that, place in Newport this past weekend, the entire town doesn't have water. And I'm thinking when they cut the water, like, we're like, well, is that our cue to head home? And they were like, we're prepared. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't have even known anything was going on around us.
That's good too. And we have, as believers in Christ, we have to be prepared. If we're not prepared, if we're not renewing our minds every day and getting into the Word, and we are people of short memory. I mean, just like we talked about, we have to get into the Word and renew our mind daily. Because if a situation like this arises, which we have situations that absolutely arise, not to this extent, but when something does happen like this, what are you?
Right. Who are you?
This Word or the chaos that's going on.
Exactly. What voice are you going to listen to? Whose are you? Who are you and whose are you?
Yeah.
And what voice are you going to listen to? And the voice that you listen to determines the steps you take.
Exactly right.
And you can have peace or chaos, and it's really up to you.
Yeah,
because God, these things don't bring surprise to Him.
No. And by sitting in your stuff, in the devastation and the chaos, with that peace. I mean, the disciples in the boat were looking at Jesus, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like, why?" And probably confused. Why? I mean, definitely confused. Why are you sleeping?
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't it be nice for us to be in this relaxed state, just full of peace, trusting Him, and that is also us being a light to the people around us that are also, in the chaos. I mean, He says, you can't put their box or whatever over a lamp, and don't hide that light, because if you don't, if you do hide that light and you're not showing that you do have peace because God is your peace, then the people around you are not going to benefit from your relationship with God too.
Exactly. So be encouraged today.
Yeah.
Be encouraged today, and just know that He's not surprised by this, and that you can truly be asleep in the boat when storms are going on. Not that you're not aware, but that you're just really relaxed in that place of trust. So
yeah. I end with a little simple short verse. And this is for anybody who's going through stuff right now. Grief.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's John 16:22. And it says, "Therefore you too have grief now, but I will see you again, and your heart will rejoice, and no one is going to take your joy away. And nobody can take our joy away. That's when it's found. The only source. Yeah. So just remember that and be encouraged that no matter what, God is, He's in it. He's in it. He might be, asleep in the storm, but you can be asleep too. Just trust.
You can curl up beside of Him.
By gosh, on that cushion. Yeah. Bye, y'all. Have a great day. Love you guys.